Thanks everybody for coming. I know this is the last session of the day, so I appreciate you being here. For this session will be our protecting workloads from DDoS attacks with our AWS Shield Advanced. My name is Justin Kurpius. I'm a global GTM specialist based out of Chicago here at AWS. And my focus for the last few years has been on our edge security services, one of which is Shield Advanced, which is mostly what we're going to cover today. So for the agenda, we're going to start with an overview and just talk about the market and talk about kind of what we're doing in this space. And then it's important, I get a lot of questions from the community, from our customers and partners on what's the difference between Shield Standard and Shield Advanced. So I'm going to go into some detail on that. I'm also going to kind of do an analogy. So we'll go high-level analogy, we'll go into some detail on that. And then we'll go into some features, and we'll really talk about the features that we have for Shield Advanced that really sets Shield Advanced apart from Shield Standard. We'll then go into some common architectures. We'll talk about how you can implement Shield Advanced into potentially the architectures you're already using today. We'll round it out with a case study, and then we'll talk about just some quick next steps. So let's go ahead and jump in. So it's interesting, when I was kind of preparing for this slide is it's like the slide that never changes. And I've been covering edge security here at AWS for about 2.5 years, and this is always the lead-in slide. So things are always changing, but some things aren't changing, right? And so things that are changing now, what we're seeing with the global pandemic, it's really accelerated the need to put applications and workloads in the cloud. And so the more we do that, the more it creates an opportunity for some bad actors. So we really look at 3 areas. We have our volumetric DDoS style attacks, which is what we have our Shield Advanced for, which is layer 3 and 4. And these, SYN floods, reflection attacks are the attacks in that space. We also have issues at the application layer. So we have our AWS WAF that helps in that area. But we're looking at things like, for those of you that are familiar with the OWASP top 10, the OWASP looks at the top threat vectors for layer 7 in a given year, and they update it quite often. So it's like SQL injection, cross-site scripting, things like that. And then bots as well. So bots are, I would say, we're hearing more and more about it every day. They're getting more sophisticated. So just another thing we have to worry about at layer 7. So with this, we're trying to, as things are changing and we have the threat vectors are expanding, we're trying to really hear from our customers on where is the intersection that we can think, when we think about building services in our end and we think about solving your issues, there's like 3 main pillars that we always come back to. Uptime protection is very important. So if it's not hard enough to build resilient applications in the cloud, you also have to make security tie into that, right? And it has to scale with your infrastructure. And then that kind of segues into scaling on demand. So some customers know when their demand is going to increase, whether it's a busy time of year or you have an event going on, or some customers might have an instance where it's unexpected. But it's expected that your protection or your security scales with your infrastructure. It's very important. And compliance. So compliance continues to be, not only do you have to set up your services and protect your infrastructure, but you also, there's compliance that you have to be compliant with, and you really have to report on that. So all needs that are very important. And then, so the challenges from getting to those needs, from solving those needs, tend to be about the same, at least for the last few years, which is so many services to integrate. So you build your network in the cloud, or you build your architecture, and now you need security to integrate with that. And there's a lot of integration points, so that's a challenge. And then you have resource drain, especially when we're talking about DDoS attacks and some of those volumetric events. It becomes very important to have to scale out for that. So that is a challenge, because how can you have to be ready and have the infrastructure to take on that scale. Lack of expertise continues to be a pain point, and I think it's been accelerating within the last year. And then looking back on all the three that I just mentioned, it just becomes expensive. So we have to, it's our goal to help you with some of these challenges to help solve some of the pillars that we talked about in the slide before. So how we do that, and what we're gonna focus on today is in the center, which is our Shield Advanced service. And this is really what I call the Shield Advanced package, because it really is a package. So Shield Advanced is our DDoS layer 3 and 4 premium service that you can subscribe to protect your resources at the edge. Now, when you subscribe to Shield Advanced, you also get our AWS WAF with Shield Advanced at no additional cost when you protect the resource with Shield Advanced and WAF. And also with the package that you get at no cost is our Firewall Manager. And so we'll touch on that as well. So this is really what we do to try to help our customers layer in the security and help it scale with their infrastructure as the demand comes up or as the need arises. So I always start the conversation, even though we're going to talk about Shield Advanced today, Firewall Manager becomes very important. And so I have the box circled around Firewall Manager managing Shield Advanced centrally for all your accounts, right? So some customers do not have a need for Firewall Manager. Maybe they only have a few accounts. But for customers that have many accounts, they want to centrally have visibility to where Shield is, where Shield Advanced is protecting resources in their environment, and then when it's in use and when it's not. So Firewall Manager can help give you visibility, help you push out Shield Advanced globally for the resources that you deem important to need Shield Advanced. However, I like to lead this slide because we talk about layering in security. And that tends to be the hardest part. So not only does Firewall Manager manage Shield Advanced centrally, it also manages AWS WAF and some other services. VPC security groups, we've had that out for a while. And some of our newer security services, like Network Firewall and our DNS Firewall Resolver as well. So Firewall Manager becomes that really the central point where you can have visibility and push out security policy globally, and really helps our customers with that visibility and compliance as well. And as I said, compliance becomes very important. Firewall Manager integrates with Security Hub. So we have a lot of customers that are asking about Security Hub. So we can feed in compliance, whether you're talking about CIS, HIPAA, PCI, or whatever it might be. So before I jump in, so I wanted to overview the Firewall Manager, but before I jump into Shield Advanced, I get this question so often, and you know, sometimes it's hard to answer for a number of different reasons, but I'll first start with an analogy. So the way I look at the difference between Shield Standard and Shield Advanced is, and I think I can kind of relate it to what we've seen in the last few years, which is, for me, been working from home a lot, and sometimes I like to just jump in the car and go for a drive, just kind of get away. I've been chained to the desk, working remotely. So when I do that, I call it a Sunday drive. You can call it, whatever you want. I don't have to be anywhere. I just get in my car and just go for a drive. I don't have to be anywhere from A to B, doesn't matter what time. So that's one scenario. The other scenario is, let's say I have a meeting. It's a very important meeting. I cannot be late, and I have to know what's going on. I need to know, have the tools to understand if there's going to be a problem. Maybe it's a construction zone, or maybe there's an accident. And I need to have that visibility, and I need to be able to maneuver around it. So that's like the Shield Advanced. So this is the difference between Shield Standard and Shield Advanced. Shield Standard, it's like the road that's out there. It's working in the background. There's nothing you need to configure. It's just as you use resources in our cloud, in AWS's cloud, Shield Standard is working in the background. If you need, for mission critical applications, you need visibility, and you need you need to be able to configure a few different pieces of Shield Advanced that we'll talk about later, then that's where Shield Advanced comes in. So now into more of the detail, the difference between Shield Standard and Shield Advanced. I know there's a lot in this slide. That the last really point I'll talk about Shield Standard is the top blue box there. That's Shield Standard. So again, it's working in the background. It does a very good job at the volumetric, maybe up to about 90% of the really big volumetric, kind of dumber DDoS attacks, Shield Standard does a great job at that. So you don't get any visibility, there's no configuration, it just works in the background. All the other stuff is what Shield Advanced brings to the table. So before I get into some of the specific features, the resources on the left is everything that Shield Advanced seamlessly protects in our cloud. So Amazon CloudFront, our Elastic Load Balancers, Global Accelerator, and our Elastic IPs. So you can go in the console, go into Shield Advanced, and choose what resources you want to protect, and those are the resources that you can we integrate these custom protections into. So okay, so I'll start from the top layer on the features on the side. So starting with Shield Advanced gives you an additional, more visibility, an additional layer of protection at layers 3 and 4, and at 7 layer 7 because we integrate with our AWS WAF, and again it comes with the package at no additional cost when you have Shield Advanced and WAF working together. So from the second row, the visibility, and we'll kind of cover some more of this in detail, but you get visibility from CloudWatch events. So in your Shield Advanced console, you'll see the events or DDoS attacks that may have happened in the day or time frame that you choose, and then it'll show if it shows red, that means the attack is underway, and then once Shield Advanced mitigates the attack, then it turns green. But you still get the visibility of what happened, what's happening, and you can view that across all your accounts. You also have a threat dashboard within the UI that you can view your accounts and view kind of what's going on across the globe. And again, this is stuff, Shield Standard, just working in the background. You wouldn't have access to this. And then you also get 24/7 support with our Shield response team. So we think about this as your team. As you subscribe to Shield Advanced, you'll have direct access to our Shield response team, which you'll hear me refer to as SRT for short. And they help with a lot of things. And we'll take a deeper dive into how our SRT team or Shield response team can help you in your environment. And then now getting into some of the features. So we have an adaptive L3, L4 protection, which what we really want to do with Shield Advanced is we want to understand what specifically is going on with your resources. And we start to learn kind of the traffic flow. We start baselining, so it allows us to understand if there's anomaly, then we can queue into that. And so going back to Shield Standard and Shield Advanced, Shield Standard is just there to keep everything up and running. It's specific to a very large environment or AWS infrastructure. And so you may have an event that affects one of your resources, but Shield Standard might not get because it's specific to your resources. So this is where that adaptive L3, L4 comes in. And we also have L7 anomaly detection. And again, WAF is so integral to Shield Advanced, and that's why it comes at no additional cost. But so we take a look at some of the anomalies at L7 with some of the WAF logs and bring that into the equation as well. And then we have a newer feature that we launched, which is our health-based detection. So if we take a step back and what we just talked about from the anomaly detection and we start baselining what's going on with your specific resources, we like to use the health-based detection, and really it's a Route 53 health check, so that we can understand if the resource is healthy. So for example, if you have a resource that we're seeing an anomaly with Shield Advanced, but yet the Route 53 health check is turned on, but the health check is saying, well, hey, this resource is responding, it's actually very healthy, then that helps us take a look and say, okay, we'll create an event in Shield Advanced. However, we won't wake you up at 2 in the morning for this event because the resource is actually healthy. So, but with that said, with the health-based detection, we can also look the other way. So if we have an anomaly and we have a resource that is unhealthy from the criteria you set up in the Route 53 health check, then we know we escalate that and we know there's a problem. And then so this kind of goes into another feature that we've released, I'd say within the last year, which is our proactive event response. So what that allows us to do, and we get a lot of questions here as well, but it allows us to, once you set up proactive event response, it will tie in our Shield response team. And so our Shield response team will be watching, and when there's an event, and when I say event, I mean we have an anomaly detected and you have a resource that's unhealthy and not responding, then our Shield response team will proactively reach out to you or whoever you specify from your team to help you mitigate that. And so it's typically once everything's set up correctly, the Shield response team, as they're calling you or emailing you, they're queued into the WAF logs. They already have a good understanding of what's going on in your environment, so that when they call you, it's more or less, hey, here are the IPs that we need to add to an IP table and WAF to help mitigate this, or they'll help you understand what you have to put in place. Now, this is kind of where the questions came in, which is, hey, this is great, but we'd like to have this automated, right? Rather than us, and by the way, in the council, you can choose who you want from your team to be called or emailed. And so I think you can add up to, maybe it's more than 10 now, but we typically say, our recommendation is you add, if you have a team at the SOC, that there's an email alias, you add that so it goes out to everybody. But the question is, can't we automate that? Like can you, rather than calling us and letting us know that, or helping us update the WAF rule to help the event or the attack, can we automate that? And so in comes our latest update from a feature perspective, which is our automatic layer 7 mitigation. And so what we're doing here is we're taking our findings from Shield Advanced and feeding that into a managed rule within our AWS WAF. So what that allows us to do is we get around having to do the proactive event response and reach out to you. That option is still there, but if you really want to automate that, you can do that with this feature. And so we'll go into more detail on this feature and kind of how it works and some of the details on it. And then the last row, which is more the kind of the cost protection, the cost focus features. So as I've discussed, WAF comes with Shield Advanced at no additional cost. And I'll just caveat this and put an asterisk here to say, we do have some managed rules within WAF that are now premium managed rules of some new releases around our bot control. So we launched our bot control about a year ago, and then more recently, our account takeover prevention. So in the console, you'll see it. It says it pretty clear. It says paid managed rules, and then everything below that is kind of the free managed rules that come with WAF. So those premium managed rules are an additional cost. But outside of that, as long as you're protecting the resource with Shield Advanced and WAF comes at no additional cost. And I also discussed Firewall Manager, no additional cost as well for global security policies that you're setting up for Shield and for WAF, but also cost protection. So we're gonna go into some of the kind of the common architectures, but when you, and I'll discuss a white paper that really covers this in detail as well. But when you set up best practices, we have a number of other services that really help you if you have a DDoS event. We help kind of take on some of the expanded flow from DDoS events. And so when you subscribe to Shield Advanced, we give cost protection. So if you have your resources scale, like CloudFront, your load balancers, Route 53, if they scale because of a DDoS attack and you have Shield Advanced, we will cover the cost over your baseline costs. And so we set up a ticket for that, and we can help cover those costs so that you have certainty around when you're using Shield Advanced and you have all the best practices set up. If there is an attack that kind of goes beyond, that has to use our resources to scale, we can help cover that. So I'm going to jump into a few features, and again, I think this is very important because a lot of people ask, well, Shield Advanced, Shield Standard. The first big difference is the visibility, and I said, I kind of covered this, but this is the visibility you get within the platform from some CloudWatch alarms. So what you're seeing here, the first one is you'll have details on the detection and mitigation metrics. So when you're in your console, you'll start from a page, you'll see all of your DDoS events, if there are any. And when you click on that event, this is the first page you'll go to, which shows you advanced detection and mitigation metrics like bits and packets per second, how much was passed, how much was dropped. So you get a really good amount of detail here. And then if you go on the next tab over, you'll have your top contributors that were a part of that event. So you get some details like the volume by protocol, what kind of port IP, and you can switch and look between bits and packets per second. So more detail on what is going on in your environment. And again, this is Shield Advanced and not Shield Standard. So the Shield response team. So I kind of touched on this as a benefit, but the Shield response team, I think what some customers don't realize is they do more than just help respond when you have a problem. So there's a lot of things that they can help with behind the scenes, and it can be proactive and reactive. So proactive, we've had customers that they know they have a busy time of year coming up, and they want the SRT team to look at their setup and make sure they're well architected for the event that's coming up, for any possible DDoS events. They do a lot of things. So if you have an event, you can reach out to them for help, advice. They do some work at creating rules to put into WAF to help respond to some of these DDoS events. But so they're your team. So again, when you subscribe, you'll get how to reach out to SRT correctly for the different things that they do. And we highly recommend that you use them as a resource because they are there to help you. And so kind of a day in the life of, or a week or a month of our Shield response team. And this is kind of really where, as they work and as they take in a lot of information, how our customers benefit from this. So first and foremost, we get a lot of intelligence for both Shield Advanced and our WAF from our retail side, from Amazon.com. So we see a lot of different IPs and a lot of different types of large attacks and bots and such. So we take that information amongst other things and we can start there. We get a lot of requests from customers as these events happen across the globe. And so we have two teams. We have a team in Europe and we have a team in Seattle. And so they're taking in calls and requests all the time. And so they take that and they're learning from what they're seeing. Because a lot of these larger attacks, there's a common theme across, whether it's a vertical, a segment of customers, or et cetera. So they can really help understand that and kind of get in front of that. Then they can implement. They can look at what they're finding and start putting together maybe changes to a response that they're reaching out to our customers on for the proactive response, or it could be updates to our managed rules. So then they can deploy it and test it and start running analysis to make sure they're not seeing a lot from the false positive front. And then they can actually deploy it, and then it just kind of starts again. And so they're always watching, learning, and they have a lot of feedback from customers as time goes on. So automatic layer 7 DDoS mitigation. We've had a lot of requests for this, and we're really happy that we've recently launched this. So some of the details here, and as I said, when you set up Shield Advanced, you can follow the steps in the console to set this up. But what it does is because it feeds into our AWS WAF at layer 7, you have to have a web ACL set up for the resource you're protecting with Shield Advanced. So let's say you're protecting a CloudFront distribution and you want to set this feature up. It's just going to prompt you as you walk through to set up a web ACL. So you can either just set one up that only has the Shield, the Shield managed rule in it, or if you already have one set up, it'll populate that in the UI, so you can see that and you can pick from the web ACL that you want to add this to. But so now what happens is our Shield response team is always managing that, because what we've seen and most of our customers can probably have experienced, some of those ACLs get really long. As you set them up, you keep adding to them and they keep growing. And so our Shield response team has different mechanisms set up to make sure, whether it's, because a lot of these DDoS attacks are really quick and volumetric, so they make sure that they're always cleaning that. They're always making sure that there's not scope creep and it's not getting very large, taking up space within your web ACL. And so they'll pull that out as they update it and then keep it well managed. Now this is a shot within the console, and again, like I said, when you set up this feature, it just walks you through in the console. So you're ensuring that the resource is protected by a web ACL. You have to also, if you already have a web ACL in place and you're choosing from the dropdown, you have to ensure that you have enough WCUs within that web ACL. And so really, for those of you that aren't familiar with what that is within our WAF, it's really just, we have a limited amount of rules you can add to a web ACL. And so I think it tops out now at about 1,500. So you just have to make sure you have 150 for this Shield Advanced managed rule that updates from Shield into WAF. So now, because we touched on WAF, I think it's important just to high level talk about what WAF means, because WAF is very important for Shield Advanced. So our AWS WAF is our layer 7 protection. It comes with Shield Advanced, but just some key notables. So it, just like Shield Advanced, has a kind of a frictionless, seamless setup with our edge services. So with CloudFront, with API Gateway, with AppSync, and with our, let's see, CloudFront API Gateway, AppSync, and I'm thinking CloudFront API Gateway, AppSync. There's one more, and I'm missing it. They should have 3. I'll think of it in a minute. So frictionless setup with those services. Low operation overhead. And what we mean by that is, with our rules, you can choose our managed rules, and you can just turn them on. And we manage those. You can put them in count mode if you'd like, as you set them up. And then when you decide that they work for your environment, you can then put them in black mode. We also have custom, so it's easy. You can use our managed rules, or you can get into a lot of detail on how you customize WAF, whether it's geolocation, rate-based rules, all different kinds of if you want to respond with a CAPTCHA, there's a lot of different things that you can do, and you have a lot of flexibility to get as deep as you want. And then you can also pull in third-party partner rules within our marketplace. And so when we talk about layered security, we do have some customers that want to pull in, whether it's F5 or Fortinet or some of our other partners. You can do that and pull that right into that web ACL. So WAF becomes very important with Shield Advanced as you look to expand your protection beyond layers 3 and 4. So I'll transition into common architectures. And so everything that I just covered, from all the features you get with Shield Advanced and all the benefits from SRT, everything that we talked about feeds into these common architectures. So the hope is, if you're thinking about subscribing to Shield Advanced, you can now see kind of how it ties in your environment, because some of these you might already be using. And I'll touch on a white paper, a DDoS resilient white paper that we have at the end, which really kind of goes over all this and talks about the importance of the more layers you set up within our cloud, the more protection you get from scaling events. So in this case, we'll start with protecting web applications. This is a common architecture, which as you're looking at some of the services on here, some of the services that we all know very well, starts with our Route 53. So starting with DNS lookup, and then we're putting WAF and Shield Advanced either at CloudFront at the edge, filtering that before it gets into your environment, or you have the flexibility to also put it on your load balancer as well. So you can use Shield Advanced and WAF on the load balancer, and that brings back to when I said the 4 resources that WAF works on is API Gateway, Load Balancer, CloudFront, and AppSync. That was load balancer was escaping me. But it shows you here. So you have flexibility on how you want to protect your web applications, but everything that I just discussed with Shield Advanced can be turned on, whether it's at CloudFront or, in this case, your load balancer. So that's for protecting web applications. We also have customers that have latency-sensitive applications. Our gaming customers comes to mind, and many other, but a lot from gaming. So in this case, it's similar to what we saw for web applications, only we're using Global Accelerator, and Shield Advanced can help protect Global Accelerator. So that's one avenue, and we can also put, depending on your architecture, we can put Shield Advanced on the EIP as well, rather than Global Accelerator, depending on, again, how your environment's set up and your needs. We also, for serverless, again, similar setup, only we're introducing our API gateway. So the path flow is Route 53. We can do CloudFront at the edge, and we can have WAF and Shield on CloudFront at the edge, or you have flexibility to put WAF and Shield in the path of API gateway as well. So WAF works on API gateway. So in this case, if you wanted to have Shield Advanced as well, you could put that on CloudFront, and it would still be in the path, and it would still negate the cost of WAF because it's both in the line of traffic. And then finally, this is an interesting one, and what I find is not a lot of people realize that we have the capability to do this. And we had a very interesting customer request. We had a customer that was under a DDoS attack, and one of the styles of attacks we've seen over the past 2 years is a ransomware type DDoS attack. So it's basically, hey, they'll get the phone call, they'll hear from some of these bad actors, and these bad actors will say, hey, I'm gonna take your website down in 7 days. And oh, by the way, I'll give you a little hit of DDoS every day leading up to that time they give on the 7th day. So, and they were actually going through it. They were going through with it. They were somewhat successful with this. And so the request was, you can stop all this if you give me X amount of Bitcoin. So we had a customer reach out to us and say, hey, we have this going on, but the problem is the application is on-prem. It's not in your cloud. And they were transitioning to our cloud. And so what can we do? Well, in this case, this is what we said to them, and they didn't really realize we could do this, which is we can protect either on-premise applications or, applications that might be in another cloud, depending on what you're looking to do, by setting up an edge VPC. So really kind of similar to what we've been talking about from a architectural setup, which is we set up Route 53 and we set up CloudFront in that edge VPC. And we put obviously WAF and Shield Advanced on CloudFront. And so if we stop there, and again, depending on what you're looking to accomplish, we can do that and have that be, you point your traffic to our Route 53, it hits our services in the cloud, and then we bring that back to your application on-prem. We can do that with a direct connect, and that's where it kind of goes into some details and some more technical, different, depending on the infrastructure you have set up. But essentially what we can do is set up that edge VPC, point your traffic at our edge VPC, we can filter that, and then send that back on-prem. So that was one scenario, and it worked for them. Now, there are other scenarios that you can use this where if you're thinking about, or if you're already moving applications or workloads to our cloud, and you want to kind of start with whether it's Shield Advanced or WAF, you can. This becomes a way to kind of help you understand and kind of dip your toe into it, if you will, by using this, because you can essentially throttle the traffic that you send through our WAF and Shield and Route 53 within Route 53, and just kind of over time start out with 10% of your traffic, test the rules, test Shield Advanced, and then move more over when you're comfortable. So there's a lot of flexibility with this, but again, some of our customers don't realize that we can do this. All right, so for a case study, this was we had a gaming customer call up, and they had an issue, and what was interesting is they had subscribed to Shield Advanced, but they hadn't taken the extra steps. They liked the ability to have our Shield response team be kind of a insurance for them, if you will. If they have a problem, they can call them. Well, that's what they did. So they called our Shield response team, And our Shield response team found out really quick that they didn't have the best practices set up. They didn't have a WAF set up at least in logging mode. They didn't have any resources protected, so it became a problem. So our Shield response team helped walk them through it, set up protection with Shield Advanced, and then took the logs and put them through their analyzer and was able to back out all the IPs that were causing a problem, make the recommendation, put that into place within the AWS WAF by IP rule set, and stop the problem. So bringing them back to normal. So you can see some of the screenshots. It might be a little small, hard to make out. Some of the screenshots below show all of the spikes and responses and drop packets. And then you can see where our Shield response team came in and put the fix in play. It brought everything back to normal. So this is a kind of a good segue into getting started with Shield Advanced. It's very important that after you subscribe, so it starts with subscribing, and when you subscribe, there's a $3,000 a month subscription cost, and so when you go to subscribe for the first time, it's going to show you, hey, you know you're signing up for $3,000 a month, and then there's data transfer out costs depending on which resources you're protecting, and a few other, it's a one-year term, so it kind of goes through all that. You check the box, and then you're subscribed. But then after that, there are other steps that you have to do, which is you have to protect a resource. And we give you the ability to choose the resources you protect because there is a data transfer out cost as you protect more resources. So let's just say, for example, you have a bunch of CloudFront distributions and you select those CloudFront distributions to be covered by Shield Advanced. Now they're protected. Then we highly recommend you configure your Route 53 health checks. And you can do that within Shield Advanced. And by the way, all this that I'm going through in the UI, it walks you through setting up each step. So you configure your Route 53 health check. You enable proactive DDoS response. So you're turning it on, the ability for our team to call your team, and you're putting in the resources that you want our team to call. Very important. And then you can enable automatic application layer 7 DDoS mitigation, which is our new feature. It was in the notes. I forgot to add about it, but you can do that and start it in count mode. You don't have to. You can turn that on. It'll set up the managed rule within WAF, and you can put it in count mode to get a feel for how that works out for you. Configuring your CloudWatch alarms just so you have all your updates within your console, so you can see what's going on. And again, that really walks you through, the UI walks you through all of the specifics on that. And then we highly recommend you create a rate-based rule within our AWS WAF. So that's just kind of the fallback plan. I mean, worst case, create one that's, whether it's 5,000 hits a minute within a rolling 5-minute window from the same IP. And then if it gets over that, then we'll automatically block that. And then you can set it to where after it's out of those, say, 5,000 hits in that 5-minute rolling window, it'll open it back up again. But very important. So we're kind of coming to an end here, and I want to reference a quote from Anna Duvernay, which is, when you're in your lane, there's no traffic. So I talked about the difference between Shield Standard and Shield Advanced. And so what we find is when we help our customers understand how Shield Advanced works, how to properly set it up, and also help them understand not every resource could need Shield Advanced, right? You might have some resources that aren't mission critical, and you don't have to protect them with Shield Advanced. But when you know that going into it, and you're familiar with all that, it helps out when the going gets tough. When you have all the protocols set up and you understand how that works. It can be less chaotic and seem like less traffic. So I thought that was a fitting quote. So as far as next steps, so two important things, and I've referenced this I think twice in this speech, which is there's an existing AWS Shield Advanced best practice white paper, and we've just recently, I think this was launched back 3 or 4 years ago. We've just recently refreshed this and updated with some of the new features, but this really speaks to the broader, not only Shield Advanced, but to the broader services on your best practices you could follow to make sure that your applications and your workloads are resilient against DDoS events. So I pointed that out. I mean, I don't know how you're going to get you may get the slide afterwards, but if you just Google that, it'll pop. It's one of the first things that pops up. We get a lot of people that go to that. So for existing customers, you can go out, you can check that out, and even new customers as well. But on the other side, for customers that are thinking about, and for any of you in the room that are thinking about trying Shield Advanced, as I discussed, when you go to subscribe, you get the drop down, right? Which is like, hey, you're paying $3,000 a month, and there's data transfer costs. So some of our customers are like, well, I'd like to try it first, and so we hear you, and so we do have a program that we will allow you to enable Shield Advanced. Try it all you want. We'll give you a $6,000 credit, which if for $3,000 a month, it essentially covers the first 2 months. And then we allow you to opt out after month 2, because it's a one-year commitment. So, but basically what we're doing is we're saying, hey, we want to help you. We want you to be comfortable with how this works, and we will support you by providing you this program. So I would urge you, if you're interested, reach out to your account manager. All those requests are probably going to come back to me, and I look forward to accepting those requests. So with that, we're at the end. I do want to call out, I think you've probably seen this in a number of presentations, but check out our skill builder and our AWS certifications. There's a lot of cool stuff. So if you want to learn more about Shield Advanced, great, you can probably find it there. And then also with some of the resilient other edge services that helps you protect your environment. So thanks so much for showing up. I know, again, it's late in the day, so greatly appreciate it. If there are any questions, we kind of have about 15 minutes. If there's any questions, I'll stick around up front and answer any questions you may have. So thanks so much. And please complete the survey. Thank you.